And welcome back into a live edition of the North Star Takes podcast following the Vikings Week 3 victory over the Seattle Seahawks, 30-17. Just an amazing game by the offense today, all the way around. This is some of the best football I think we've seen under the Kirk Cousins, Mike Zimmer era here with the Vikings. Just a super impressive day overall. Kept Seattle in check the entire second half, which was really impressive. What are your initial thoughts, I guess, right off the bat here? Vikings defeating the Seahawks at home.
Yeah, this was a very crisp win against a pretty good team, in my opinion. I think that we played pretty well throughout. I think the only downfall really was the defense the first few drives of the game, but after that, they tightened up. The offense was just humming the whole time from beginning to end, and that was really encouraging to see. And like you mentioned, this is looking great for Kirk because this is arguably the best 3-game stretch I've ever seen him play with the Vikings. So I think this is awesome that he's really come to play. And he kind of looked like he was playing with some fire out there, actually. It seemed like he had a little bit more emotion than he usually does. You even saw him on the sidelines chatting with Jefferson and Thielen mid-game, which usually you don't. And then you get the sideline reporter in the middle of the game reporting that he's been having these weekly sessions with Zimmer to watch film, just discuss all things football. So I think this is great that Kirk's taking those steps. Obviously, we would have liked to have seen this happen a long time ago. But, I guess better now than never. But this is just a great step in the right direction for us to win the home opener for all the fans coming back for the first time since 2019. And I think that really fueled the defense there, especially down the stretch in that game when they had a lot of big stops in that second half. So I'm pretty excited with the way we played today, and hopefully we can keep that momentum going because honestly, if we can get past Cleveland next week, I think we have 2 even more winnable games against Detroit and Carolina right before the bye week to give us a realistic chance of being 4-2. Obviously, you don't want to count your chickens before they hatch, but I think there's a real opportunity there in front of us.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think today was a real kind of turning point game. If they fell to 0-3, I think it would have really felt like all hope is lost. People would be talking about Zimmer's job, maybe even Spielman's job, which, I mean, we were already kind of hinting at that. At least I was hinting at it a little bit after the 0-2 start. But, I mean, they didn't get blown out the first 2 weeks, which is good. I mean, they lost a bad game against the Bengals, which they shouldn't have. Last week was a super competitive game that came down to the very end. We really should have won that game.
Exactly.
Offense played fantastic once again last week. And then this week, offense looks great again. I was almost kind of expecting a dud from the offense just because the expectations were so high. Like we have to win this game or else, a lot of people's jobs are going to be in question. No Dalvin Cook, so I was kind of expecting Kirk to struggle a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's like the first time I can remember us having a truly this good of a game on offense with Dalvin out. When we've had Kirk, like it's usually a disaster, or at least borderline just mediocre whenever Dalvin's out, like Kirk's in. So that was very nice to see too.
Yeah, it was very nice to see Madison have a good game. I know he's been working extremely hard. We've always thought he's been a good back, and today he kind of proved it by having like his first complete game as a starting running back. So that was really good to see. We got Jefferson more involved today, which was also awesome to see. We'd been kind of calling for that after the first 2 weeks. So yeah, good to see the gritty at US Bank Stadium with a ton of fans in attendance, obviously.
Yes.
Just a lot of positive things to go around today, I guess. Zimmer seemed very happy in the post game. A lot of guys are saying this is the best they've ever seen Kirk look. He's got some swag to him. He looks more determined than ever. I mean, we got to tone down the hype a little bit. We're 1-2, but like it's encouraging that Kirk has looked so good, at least to start off the season, because he's kind of known for having slow starts at the beginning of the season. So yeah, overall, I mean, today was a very impressive win. The first time we've beaten the Seahawks since 2009. So I'm very happy, and hopefully we're on the right track.
Yeah, it's amazing that we finally got past Russell Wilson. Like you mentioned, the last time we beat them, we had Favre under center. But so now here we are. Finally, I think Russell Wilson's 7-1 against us, and Mike Zimmer against the Seahawks is 1-5. Finally beat the last team he hadn't beaten in the NFC with the Vikings. So that's cool. Obviously, just another milestone for him in his time here with the Vikings. But I would also add that, like you meant, it was a good point to bring up that Kirk, he usually does not get off to starts like this at the beginning of the season. Usually it takes him a couple games to get rolling. So it's nice that we're just hitting the ground running right away. And I don't think anybody, especially on offense, really looked bad today. Like I think he got everybody involved at one point or another. Osborne making more third down catches, which is just super. That's relieving, honestly, because we've been missing that the last couple of years. And like you
Agreed.
said, getting Jefferson more factored into the game plan, or just throwing the ball more, plain and simply. And then you got Thielen still reeling in a touchdown catch like he's done since the beginning of last year. And then
Mm-hmm.
you got even the Gronklin, like he was making a lot of big possession
Yes.
catches today, and that's really cool, especially with Irv out, that we had somebody at the tight end position step up. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that was big time. And like you said, it was just going back to Madison. He filled the shoes real nice for Delvin, because obviously Dalvin's the center of this offense for Zimmer and Clint's eyes. So I think that's a huge deal that Madison was just able to make that transition pretty seamlessly, and we never fell flat footed today. So that was good.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said there. Yeah, I think what was interesting for me today is
Mm-hmm.
that with Dalvin Cook out, it seemed like they opened up the offense more. They
Mm-hmm.
trusted Kirk more. They let him throw the ball down the field, gave him more play actions, and that's stuff that we haven't really seen the first 2 weeks of the season.
Not too much,
So,
no.
I'm kind of hoping that's something that they look back on when they watch film this week, going forward as well, that we can open the offense up more and trust Kirk more, because like you said, if you have
Yes.
three really good receivers plus a tight end as well that's contributing, and then both your running backs are good, and even today the offensive line once again seemed to hold up pretty well. Granted, Seattle doesn't really have anybody that's threatening on that defensive line, but
No, I mean
uh,
they're a team that had a safety lead them in sacks last season. So I
yeah,
mean, obviously
exactly.
the defensive line, like I think they're a physical bunch, but like none of them are any of these elite pass rushers by any means.
Exactly. So 2 weeks in a row of the offensive line holding up really well, which is huge for this team.
Mm-hmm.
Bradbury looked good again. So he's had two good games, one bad game. Ezra
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland, I thought, looked good. I mean, I really couldn't pick out a bad player on the offensive line today. Rashad Hill was the one that got beat on that strip sack that Kirk had, but I thought that was just kind of like a fluky play.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk was trying to roll out of the pocket, and it just kind of got slapped out of his hands. So I don't really
Yeah.
put that too much on Rashad Hill. So I thought the entire offensive line actually looked pretty darn good today. Next week,
Yes.
obviously, is going to be a different challenge with Myles Garrett coming to town, him and Jadeveon Clowney.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Browns are a beatable team. I think Baker Mayfield's a completely different quarterback when he's on the road, compared to at home. And
Yes.
they beat the Bears. The final score was pretty decent today, but I think overall, the Browns just didn't look very good today. Their offense was shaky. They left a lot of points on the field. I felt like the Bears were just horrific. I mean, Fields could not complete a pass, which kind of blew my mind. But
Oh,
yeah, I think we got the Browns kind of where we want them. Honestly, they're 2-1. They're coming into US Bank Stadium. I don't know. I've got a pretty good feeling about next week, and if we can get back to 2-2, like you said, then all of a sudden you got the Lions coming to town, and then you go take on the Panthers, who are currently 3-0. I'm still not a
but
big believer in those guys, though.
I'm not buying it. No, absolutely not. I still am not a Darnold guy, and I think their win last week against the Saints really opened my eyes. I did not expect that, to be quite honest with you. But sometimes I think weird things can also happen in divisional games. So I
Yes,
got to
that's
take it with
very
a grain
true.
of salt for now to get a larger sample size of him in Carolina. But I mean, he's taking care of business against. Their other two wins have been against probably bottom feeders of the league in the New York Jets and the Houston Texans. So I think we
Yeah.
got to see them against some more legitimate competition. But I, I'm, they are 3-0, so they know at least how to win a little bit. So we're going to have to
Mhm.
be ready for that game. But I guess that's a little ways down the road. Let's hope we can get through Cleveland first, and then we can kind of think about that and going into the bye week strong, hopefully. So I'm pretty excited with what we did today. But again, it's just one game too. That we gotta keep moving forward and keep this momentum going, and hopefully come out and play with the same kind of intensity and same kind of really rhythm next week against Cleveland.
Yeah, and I think it's important to kind of take this thing one game at a time too, because the Detroit Lions almost beat the Baltimore Ravens today if it wasn't for an NFL record 66-yard field goal by Justin Tucker, which
My
is just
guy.
cold-blooded, just ripping the hearts out of Lions fans. But
Oh my
um,
gosh.
Detroit's a tricky team. That the Vikings have had some issues with them, obviously, in the past. I mean, overall, we seem to beat up on them pretty well, but it's like you said, it's a divisional game. Jared Goff's not a complete scrub, so you don't really know what to expect, I guess. I mean, they're not a good team for sure, and they should be probably the worst team on our schedule this year. But
Hmm.
it doesn't necessarily mean anything unless you actually go out there and win the game. So I think it's important to take it one game at a time, but for sure enjoy this victory and then just move on to Cleveland from there. I think there's a lot of good things to build off of. And, defensively, I think Cleveland's going to be a bit better than Seattle. But I think if we just kind of use the same formula we had today, and if the offensive line is able to hold up as well, I don't see why we would have any trouble with those guys.
Yeah, no kidding. Honestly, I think I'm curious to see if the grades reflect that for offensive line tomorrow with PFF releasing all the
Right.
numbers and things like that, and see if it really matches the eye test. But I mean, like you said, watching the game today, any Vikings fan probably think the O line held up pretty nicely. So let's hope that's also reflecting the grades. Let's hope that's a sign of growth for this team. And I'd also like to add, continuing on this positivity party for our offense, I would also like to shout out Clint Kubiak because honestly, I think he drew up a great game plan today. I think the mix was just perfect because I think Madison had a high average yards per carry number, at least until he got to the end and garbage time, and it was clear to run the ball, just milk clock. Like beyond that, I thought he mixed it in well, so he could average probably around 5 yards a carry. And then Kirk just doing his thing out there. I felt like the receivers running wide open all day long. And I feel like that one of the points in the game plan must have been to go after Trey Flowers today because I felt like he got picked on a lot and he was not good at all. So I'm glad that we exposed him like that.
Yeah, I think what was fun to watch today is just how open these receivers got. I mean, you got elite receivers with Jefferson and Thielen. It's so good to see that Thielen is still elite at 31 years old. KJ Osborne is coming into his own as well. He didn't have a big game by any means, but he had a couple nice catches in the second half. But yeah, Justin Jefferson was the star of the show today, which was so nice to see. He's such a good route runner. Like on that touchdown pass he caught, I mean, it's like it reminds me of Stephon Diggs, honestly. He's not quite as quick and sudden, but I mean he still jukes people out, gets wide open. It's so nice to see. The Vikings I think they know how to develop receivers, man. I mean, Jefferson was a first-round pick, but having Thielen as an undrafted guy, KJ Osborne as a fifth-round pick, Diggs was a fifth-round pick. I really like where this team is at right now with skill position players, especially, and seeing Tyler Conklin. I mean, I don't want to say who needs Irv Smith because I think Irv Smith can be a really good player, but
absolutely. Can you imagine how much more this offense could have potentially reached today with Irv Smith in the mix too? Wow.
Exactly. Like it'd be nice to have like a solid two tight ends, but I mean, Conklin, I think, is filling in really nicely as the tight end one. He's doing a fantastic job. So honestly, besides, Rashad Hill being a little suspect, I think Bradbury's still questionable as well. I don't really have any other concerns on the offense right now.
No, with the way things are going, you can't really complain about how else it's shaking out because obviously, like you mentioned with that offensive line, I feel like there's still a couple question marks there to be ironed out, especially between guys like Bradbury and Rashad Hill. But then when we're getting pretty solid play at Ezra Cleveland left guard, and then Ole Udoh stepping in for his first season at right guard, that's huge. Yes. And I feel like he's kind of flying under the radar there, but that's awesome because really we don't even need him to be good. We're just looking for him to be average and just not a complete liability, and then we'll be fine with him. So I think maybe then if we get better O-line play, we can start to raise our expectations, which would be great. But then obviously our skill group they're just dynamic, and I feel like we've said that all along. It's just about this offensive line keeping Kirk clean in the pocket because then he can pick a defense apart all day like he did today, and I really hope we get more of the same in Cleveland next week. So,
yeah, my one true concern is the run defense. This first half, they were awful against Chris Carson. I mean, they couldn't. Chris Carson's good, but I mean, he didn't have like a negative rush, I don't think, in the first half. It was unbelievable. And I worry about that a lot with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt coming to town next week. I mean, that's a great running back duo right there. So the defense is going to have to learn how to bring it right out of the gates because they made a good adjustment at halftime this week. I thought last week they made a good adjustment at halftime as well. So 2 weeks in a row, they've been able to kind of settle down in the second half and control it a little bit. I don't think they allowed a point in the second half today.
No, I think we shut them out like 9-0 or something in the second half.
Yeah, because we kicked field goals in the second half, which was fine. It would have been nice to finish a couple of those drives, but Seattle just looked like such a hot mess offensively that I wasn't really too concerned. It would have been nice to put the game away. I think we had like a 4th and 1 at the 1. We kicked a field goal instead of going for the touchdown to kind of end the game. But I mean, you can't complain when the offense puts up 30 points. So we put up 30 today. We put up 33 last week. And what did we put up week 1? 24. So we're averaging pretty darn close to
30 a game.
30 a game, which is super impressive. So
Yeah.
got some comments here. Jackson says we're going 15-2. Oh man, how the turntables for Jackson after a win. I love it. I love the ups and downs of being a Vikings fan. Just it's fantastic. I don't know. I guess I don't know if your expectations were really changed at all after the last game. I mean, are you feeling any different about the team through these first 3 games, would you say?
No, I still think this is a team that's going to win. I'd still say 10 games. I think that's what I said last week after that Cardinals loss, and I'm pretty firm on that even after a high like today. Obviously, I'd like to bump up that win count more, but, games can happen like they have the last couple of weeks, but they could happen like they did today. And I think we have a lot of games against a lot of good teams this year. It's just going to make it tough, but I think we'll win enough of that to get to double digits. And I think that should put us in the postseason. If you win 10 games, I think you should be in. But I mean, Granted, that NFC West just looks loaded. So you never know. But it's going to be nice. Could be really helpful down the line to have this head-to-head victory over the Seahawks in case something comes down to tiebreakers, getting in a wild card spot. Because in my opinion, I think the Rams are going to run away with that division in the West.
I agree with you.
So then you're looking at teams like Seattle or like Arizona where it could hurt us to the point where tiebreakers might not work or will work in our favor just for these wild card spots. But let's hope. Straight up, let's just hope we win the division first, because then you guarantee at least one home playoff game, and that makes things a heck of a lot easier. Especially like today, you play a good team, but you win probably because you're at home. Like, it's probably a different story if you're on the road. I mean, with the way our offense played today, we probably could have played anywhere. But honestly, I still, long story short, still a firm believer in the 10-win season. How about you?
Yeah, I think we can get there, because it's not even just like, we lost to the Bengals, and the Cardinals game was a tough one, but you look at some of these teams that are upcoming on our schedule further down the line. You got the Cowboys, who haven't been super impressive by any means. You got San Francisco, who's currently losing 17-7 at the half, and Jimmy G looks like an absolute disaster against the Green Bay Packers.
Trey Lance time.
It might be Trey Lance time. So I don't think San Francisco is nearly as threatening as what we might have thought beforehand. The Ravens, they almost lost to the Lions today. They beat the Chiefs last week, but then they lost to the Raiders in week 1. Like, that's a very confusing team that's got a ton of injuries.
Yeah, I think that's just coming in with different mindsets into each game. Like, you just have a killer mindset going in against the Chiefs, or you got to play your best ball, and they did.
Yep.
But then you come into the Lions game just coasting. But that's the reality of it, is that you can lose any given Sunday in this league. So
exactly,
I think you got to come ready to play every week.
That's what's crazy. Is on it, I honestly wouldn't count us out against any team except like the Chiefs. I just don't think we'd be able to keep up with the Chiefs, even though they're 1-2, which is kind of crazy. But I think they'll end up being fine.
I feel like our secondary would just get torched against those receivers. That'd be night and day. Just, oh my gosh.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to defend those guys whatsoever. So I think we have the ability to be able to compete with anybody. It's just we always seem to play to our competition, which we've kind of seen, honestly, over the first 3 weeks. The Bengals, they kind of dragged us down with them. They ended up getting the win.
Yep.
Really good showings the last 2 weeks, though.
Yeah, and I think that's a reflection upon coaching when you play down to another team's level. But I'd also play up to, I suppose. But I was just gonna say one more thing about Jackson's comment there is I find this pretty funny, just because if we'd have lost today, I think he would have said the reverse record there of what we'd be 100%. At the end of the season.
he'd be calling for Zimmer's head, as would I probably. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, that's the fun part of it, and that's what makes the NFL so special. Is there's such a limited number of games, usually 16, now it's 17. Every game matters a lot. It's not like baseball where there's over 100, 162 games. Every game matters, and it's super important. I think that's what makes it so fun, honestly.
Yeah, and when you're watching the game every week religiously, and it's just like you said, that you can't slack off on basically any week, because you can get beat by anybody, but you have to put together good games and good wins, because otherwise you're not going to make the playoffs, give yourself a chance in the first place.
Exactly. Rux Vintage is wondering, with the team as it is, how far do you think we can really go? I know you mentioned hopefully we can win the division. Do you have any expectations in terms of making the playoffs and how far we can get if we do make the playoffs?
Okay, so I would say if things click like they did today, I think we can beat almost anybody. It just depends if we can turn this into a consistent thing. I think there's going to be tough outs in the NFC, such as the two teams that played each other today in Tampa Bay and LA. I think those would be two tremendously difficult matchups for us at any point. I
Mm-hmm.
think we're a team that can. I think we can win the division. I don't think Green Bay is as good as they usually are, or at least
Yeah.
as they were the last couple of years. And then I don't think Chicago and Detroit are really any threat towards like if we were to win 10 games, I think we'll be winning more than both of those teams. So I think they're kind of in the review mirror as well. But obviously, we got to go out and prove it every week.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say we could win this division, and I would say we could make right now. I'd say the ceiling of this team is NFC Championship. I think we can
Oh,
manage to win a wild card game against a team that's pretty evenly matched with us. Maybe even win a divisional game against a really good team, like I just mentioned with the Bucks or Rams or something. Just kind of pull one out of a hat, almost like you did against New Orleans a couple of years ago. But
yep.
then I feel like maybe the cynic in me as a Vikings fan deep down that's seen too much playoff heartbreak would just think, yep, that's where the road ends. No Super Bowl for us. It's been over 50 years. That's it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say this team can go as far as they want to. I don't think there's any like limitations on this team that prevent us from almost beating anybody, I would say. But I think you have to play some pretty perfect games to beat the very best teams. So that's pretty
Yeah.
tough.
I'd have a hard time seeing us beating the Rams or the Bucks. I mean, we have the Rams on our schedule towards the end of the season,
Yes, we
so that
do.
that could end up being a pretty big game, especially if we're in a point where we're leading our division.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know, man. The Rams and Bucks, I think, are by far the two best teams in this conference. I like you said, I think Green Bay is still good. Like with
I think they are good.
as long as you have Aaron Rodgers, you have a chance.
You're in it. Oh, yeah.
They're not a Super Bowl team. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they're coming out of the NFC, but I think they're definitely a threat to take this division. In terms of the Lions, no way. I mean, the Lions will win 3-4 games at the most.
No.
The Bears are a disaster, man. I don't know how they beat the Bengals last week, and it's
Dude,
probably only because Burrow threw 3 picks. But
Nagy is getting fired.
100%, he has to be. I mean, I think they had it was like 1.1 yards per play today, which is like one of the worst all-time NFL yards per play offensive performances ever. I mean, that is truly horrible. Like,
I don't think it's really. I don't think you can even contextualize how truly bad that is. 1.1 yards per play.
I mean, that's like, and nothing against Justin Fields. Like, he's a rookie. He's going to have some growing pains. I mean,
Oh, yes.
that's not even like an NFL professional offense. That is
No,
absolutely pathetic. I mean, that's
dude.
against the Browns, who don't have like an elite defense by any means.
No. So could you see realistically? Could you see Nagy getting fired like midseason?
Absolutely, I could. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think because the Bears have the same kind of schedule we do. Granted, they play a second place schedule. Did they take second last year in the division?
They did. Yeah, because they made the playoffs. We didn't.
So yeah, there'd be a one or two game difference there, but they have to play the NFC West just like we do. Um, they have to play the AFC North just like we do. So they beat the Bengals. We lost to the Bengals, but I don't know, man. I think the Bears at best are going to be like a 6-7 win team. Especially if they're going to like keep sticking with Fields and he's going to have these growing pains.
Mhm.
If they bring Dalton back, I think right now Dalton's at least a little more competent in terms of like being able to run the offense.
Mhm.
But man, I mean, I was watching most of that game today and they looked horrible. I mean, I feel so bad for Allen Robinson. I think he's on the franchise tag. I don't know if he's going to
No,
want to sign back there.
I wouldn't want to, especially when it feels like a disaster like this, assuming things don't improve. But obviously, too, I think factoring into that decision might be if they bring Nagy back or not, because I really don't see many scenarios where he's going to end up back because I don't see the Bears team being more than like a 500 ball club. So I think Nagy's probably on his way out, and then people got to start to question if that GM pace is the real deal too.
Yeah, I know, because like I don't know, it looked like Fields is going to be a really good quarterback, and I still think he can be. But if
Yeah.
they got that one wrong, I mean, that's going to be rough. That's really going to set them back. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm not worried at all about the Bears though. Their defense still looks pretty good. I'll give them that, but I still think they're beatable. Like really,
Mhm.
all it comes down to for the Vikings is can the offensive line hold up? Like
Yes.
playing the Rams and Aaron Donald, I really worry about our guard play and our center
Dude,
play.
no. Oh my gosh, no.
But and especially like the Bucks too have a good defense. We kind of saw that last year. They were flying
Mhm.
around against us, but
Mhm.
like the Packers defense is not very good. Seattle's defense clearly not very good. Arizona's defense not very good. We've played those two teams last 2 weeks, so yeah, I don't know. I think we can hang with anybody, but I would say I think we're capable of winning the division. I think the NFC North is probably one of the worst divisions in football. I still think the NFC East is probably the worst.
Oh yeah, I would think so too, dude. I don't know what's happened to Washington's defense this year. They've been just
Yeah.
bad because they gave up 43 to the Bills. Albeit the Bills do have a pretty good offense. Don't get me wrong. Like they were high flying last year, but they also last week Daniel Jones did almost whatever he wanted to against Washington, and really I don't think that much of Daniel Jones. And I felt like the Giants, they scored, what was it, 29 points or something like that.
Yeah.
I felt like they left a lot of points on the board that they could have capitalized on even more. So I don't know what's up with this Washington defense. It just isn't what it was last year. So if Washington's not even solid, like especially defensively, that's kind of their bread and butter, then you're kind of left with Dallas because I don't have any faith in the Giants or the Eagles at all.
No, I don't either. I think Dallas should win that division, assuming everyone stays healthy.
Exactly.
As long as Dak stays healthy, really, I think they'll win that division pretty easily. But I think we're capable of beating the Cowboys if we have to play them in the playoffs. So
since we've kind of gone down this rabbit hole anyway, talking about the NFC as a whole, is there a scenario where you see all 4 NFC West teams making the playoffs?
Whew, that is tough. It's definitely possible. I
feel like there's a reality out there where this is a true thing, because in our division, depending how this shakes out, like the start of the season has not made it look like we can. It doesn't seem like we're going to have a very high win count for a division winner. And then the NFC South, it's like, I think that's pretty thin too. I don't think the Panthers are for real. The Falcons are awful. The Bucs are really good, and the Saints I'm kind of unsure about. But
yeah, I think the problem with the NFC West is that these guys are going to, hurt themselves playing in that division. Like, I think it's pretty hard for a division to have 4 teams with like winning records, just based off how many games you have to play against your division. So Seattle honestly looks like the worst team in that division right now. But like I mentioned earlier, I don't think San Francisco is impressive whatsoever, especially as long as Jimmy G is the quarterback. I think things could change if they roll with Trey Lance and he becomes that dynamic playmaker.
Yes.
But I think Rams are easily the best team in that division, and the Cardinals are 3-0, and they've won some good games here too. And Kyler Murray looks amazing this year.
Yes. Oh man, I think he's entering the top 10 quarterbacks, probably pushing top 5, I would say, if he keeps on the trajectory he's on. But I'd also say I'd agree with you that the Seahawks seem like they're the worst team in that division right now, and that I still think they're a very solid team in their own right. And kind of going back into today's game, I would say I was surprised that it didn't look DK's way more. Like that worked very well early on, and then it just kind of disappeared. Like they stopped throwing the ball, and I feel like they needed to find ways to get him the ball, because I don't think anybody even comes close to his talent on that offense. So I would say he's a top 5 receiver in this league. So I don't see why they're not giving him more looks.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sebastian has a question. Do you think Darrisaw is going to come in and change the offensive line?
I think at first it'll seem kind of rough, just because he hasn't got a lot of reps in general with this offense in practice. So I think when he finally starts to play in a game, I think there's going to be a learning curve. But at the same time, it could be one of those things where it'll be basically maybe even worse than having Rashad Hill in there for the first probably few weeks that he's playing. But I would imagine that'd be one of those things you just see steadily get better over time. And by the end of the year, hopefully he's at least serviceable. And then moving forward beyond just this season, then he becomes more of a good, what you think will be a franchise left tackle.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's really going to change anything, because I think the offensive line, honestly, overall has been average. They were horrible week 1. They were pretty decent last week. I thought they were really good today. But like we said, Seattle just doesn't have a very good defensive line. But I think Darrisaw is going to come in, like you said. He'll have some growing pains. But honestly, I don't know if he's going to play before the bye. I think they're going to try and get by with Rashad Hill as long as they can. And I don't really blame him. I think you need to get Darrisaw as much practice time as he can. He's been limited in practice lately, so I think he's got to be back practicing full. And then, I'm sure there'll be a few games where he's like the backup left tackle in case of injury. Yeah. And then I think they'll take the bye week to really get him ready to come out and start. That's my expectation, at least. He might not even be ready by then, so who knows. But as long as Rashad Hill can just hold it down for now, that's really all we need. But yeah, hopefully Darrisaw comes in and if he has, a couple rough games, hopefully from there you can kind of see where he could be the, franchise left tackle for years to come.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I totally agree. And I kind of like the way you laid out that plan. That it makes sense, especially when you look at the past history of the Vikings and dealing with injuries, especially with rookies. I think with theirs, there's a very realistic possibility, like you said, they're going to wait till he obviously ramps up to full practice. Like I don't think he's just going to jump from limited into the starting lineup all of a sudden. So I think it'll be whenever they feel like he's good to go to start going. They don't have to hold him back at all in practice. Then, like you said, I think they probably will give him a few weeks to really get into it. And then once Rashad Hill has a disaster performance or just gets hurt or something, then I could see Darrisaw taking over the role. But for now, it feels like it's a little bit far off towards when we actually should see Darrisaw on the field.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of interesting in terms of just the whole draft class, I think. You got Darrisaw who's working his way back. Kene Nwangu he's eligible to come off the IR now since it's been 3 weeks. So
that's right.
I'll be interested to see if he's ready to go. They've been using Amir Abdullah. So I'll be kind of curious, once Nwangu's back and practicing, if they're willing to just throw him into a game. Because I know he's supposed to be a good special teamer. He might end up taking kickoff or punt return duties. He could be the third string running. Yeah, he could be the third string running back to come in certain passing situations. Yeah. So I'll be interested to see how they use him. Chaz Surratt, he hasn't really played at all. So that'll be interesting to see if he can kind of develop throughout the season. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say this real quick. Just funny note. I laughed today when got to the end of the game, and Kirk was all excited on the sidelines once we had the win locked up, and then he was dapping up his guys, Sean Mannion and Kellen Mond.
I saw Mond standing there in street clothes. I'm sure he won't be active for any games this year. No. So you can throw that one out as well. I still haven't seen Patrick Jones get in at all at defensive end.
Yeah, where is he?
And he's active every game. So granted, like today, Everson Griffin looked pretty good. He had kind of a silly penalty. He had a silly penalty, which I thought was soft anyways. I thought that was a crap call.
Yeah, it was pretty soft.
But it was kind of Russell Wilson looking at the ref saying, "Oh, really? You're not going to throw the flag?"
And top 5 QBs are always going to get that call every time. So
yeah, and it didn't end up hurting us, so it's not that big of a deal. But I kind of noticed as the game went on today that Everson Griffin was getting a lot of snaps. So I'm kind of wondering if their patience is wearing thin with DJ Wanham, because I've seen a lot of Danielle Hunter, a lot of Stephen Weatherly, and now a lot of Everson Griffin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good thing to point out. I think that's a troubling trend for us because we'd like to see obviously the young guy take steps forward and really assert himself as the number 2 guy behind Danielle, and that's kind of like you said, concerning. Just that we're seeing all these veterans play a lot more, but at the same time, I think they definitely both have earned the right. Weatherly's graded out very well by PFF standards these first few weeks, and then Everson Griffin, as far as the eye test goes, seems like he's generating a lot of pressure. So I want him on the field. I don't really care who else we have in that defensive line room. I'd much rather have a guy like, I know some people like Everson, some people don't, but I'm a fan of whoever's going to get the quarterback. It doesn't really matter to me who it is.
Yeah, the thing with Everson is he's making the vet minimum. He's not guaranteed any money whatsoever. Exactly. He is clearly still like the second best defensive end on this team. Like it's been pretty obvious through the first 2 weeks.
Yes.
Danielle Hunter obviously looks amazing. Stephen Weatherly has looked way better than he looked in the preseason. Yeah. So that's encouraging. But yeah, it's basically like the Vikings defensive end room from 2017, really. And
I know.
That's really what it is. So,
isn't that weird how that works?
I think it's a troubling trend though that we're just not developing young guys on the defense at all. It's extremely discouraging. Like Nick Vigil was a free agent signing. He's not really a young guy. So he's been pretty good. He's actually been pretty impressive, honestly. I've really liked his game. But Troy Dye, nothing. Chaz Surratt through 3 games, nothing. DJ Wanham obviously isn't playing as well as they had hoped. You see nothing from Patrick Jones. Obviously Cam Bynum's not going to get in at safety, but then at corner, I don't understand the whole why Cam Dantzler's not playing thing.
That's so frustrating.
I don't get it. Bashad Breeland is getting torched every single week.
Yeah, like that opening touchdown today. What are we doing?
Yes. It's not even fair to ask him to he's given 10 yards of space to DK Metcalf, and then he can't even go up and tackle him. It's like, what are we doing here? I don't understand it. Cam Dantzler had a tweet after the game, and then he ended up deleting it about how he's frustrated with his current situation, and I don't blame him. It's obviously not smart to tweet about it, but it's in my mind, like, granted, maybe behind the scenes he's not working hard. Maybe he's not doing stuff correctly at practice. Nobody knows. But in my mind, it is completely unacceptable that according to the eye test, especially last week, Cam Dantzler was the second best corner on the field for the Vikings.
Oh, yeah.
It's completely unacceptable to me that he is not playing. If you got something against him because of the way he practices, that's fine. But when it comes to the NFL, you're trying to win games every week, and you need to play your best players.
Oh, 100%. And I'm glad they brought up that we are on Dantzler's side for he should be playing. But I mean, granted, Sam, I'm sure, is a big Twitter guy, so I think that's the best way to connect with him is to tweet something like that, to complain about your playing time and things like that. So, but in all seriousness, I think that Dantzler should see the feet sooner rather than later. I know obviously he did last week, but yeah, Breeland just ain't it.
Yeah, I think – I don't know. Breeland looks like a guy that has the weekly injury, although I didn't see it this week, which is good. But it's going to come to the point where he's unplayable. We're going to play some really good teams coming up. I don't know. It's going to get to the point where he's unplayable, and I think they're going to have to play Dantzler at some point, which is a good thing, obviously.
Yeah, but force their hand. Yeah.
It's just like we go back to it. You're not developing any young guys on the defense. So when next year comes around, and who knows how the rest of the season's going to go, say it goes poorly, and you kind of want to rebuild. So you don't want to bring back any of these veterans you have on short-term deals. What do you have left? I mean, Jeff Gladney got cut because he, had a legal case against him, which is obviously, was a very bad thing. But that's a first-round pick gone. DJ Wanham, can he play in the NFL? We don't really know. There's no young linebackers on this team that look promising at all. Mm-hmm. No young corners besides Cam Dantzler, who we think should be a starter. And then your safety is kind of questionable too. Now, granted, you're not going to need all these young guys to play, but at the same time, that's what made the Vikings so good from 2015 through 2017. They were developing their young guys while also adding veterans like Linval Joseph and leaning on Everson Griffin, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. I think that kind of doesn't hurt us now, but it definitely could in this next year or two if we don't develop young guys, because that's how good teams are really made. You don't build a team just all off of free agents. That never works. So I think we have to really develop some of this homegrown talent and hope that we can just keep the tide rolling and with good defenses. But obviously right now our defense, the guys we do have playing I don't think they're as good as I really thought they would be at this point. But then again, maybe it's another one of those things where you give it a few more weeks and then they'll really put it together. But obviously you wouldn't want it to take 6 weeks or whatever to really get into it and start playing well, because by that point it could be too late. So I would definitely like to see the defense, as we mentioned before, just on a game-by-game basis, just coming out better right out of the gates and not coming out flat-footed and spotting the other team to 20 points or whatever.
That's what kind of blows my mind about this whole situation. So Zimmer and his staff, Zimmer is a defensive guy, first and foremost. Yeah. He's got Andre Patterson, who has been an excellent defensive line developer for years. He developed Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter is basically his most prized possession, but he's churned out good defensive linemen for years.
He even brought Everson Griffin along early because Everson Griffin had been on team since like 2010 or something, but I don't think he really started playing a lot until it got to when Zim first came in, and they chose to extend him over bringing in that guy from Cincinnati, Michael Johnson, if you remember that. So right. I think that's definitely one of his go-tos as well, and now he's back in the fold, of course. So I think that both guys are definitely really good players, and I think they'll both be Vikings Ring of Honor players down the road. But I think it would be nice to have another one in a long line of successful defensive ends that we've had. But it just feels like it's goofy when we're talking, we got the same defensive end rotation that we had back in 2017 minus like B-Rob. So
I think where I was getting to though is so this is a defensive centered head coach. He's got guys on his defensive coaching staff that are supposed to be the best of the best. And it seems as of late that all the young guys, all our draft picks that have actually developed have been on the offensive side of the ball.
Truth.
Because
yeah.
Defense, who's like the latest guy that's truly developed into a good player? I'm thinking Eric Kendricks and Daniil Hunter, and those are guys from the 2015 draft.
Oh, no.
Offense, you got KJ Osborne, who was a 5th-round pick last year. Justin Jefferson was a 1st-round pick last year.
Ezra Cleveland, 2nd round, if he turns into something.
Ezra Cleveland. Oli Udoh was a 6th or 7th-round pick.
Yep.
O'Neal was a 2nd-round pick that he was considered raw.
Yeah, he was.
All of a sudden, he's developed into this, I would say borderline elite right tackle.
I would agree with that. And then you got Dalvin, 2nd-round pick.
Dalvin Madison, a 3rd-round pick. Kirk is like the one different. Yeah, because he was a free agent. So, but yeah, like they've developed a lot of guys on the offensive side of the ball, but defense, it's like they're relying on, bringing in a Michael Pierce and a Dalvin Tomlinson, who Dalvin Tomlinson's done absolutely nothing so far.
No, that's been very disappointing. I really don't like to see that. I would expect more out of him because I thought this run defense would just look a whole lot better than it has. So I hope that gets better as time goes on, because if it doesn't, then we're just wasting money on that interior.
When I questioned that from the start, because it's like, what are we doing with basically 2 nose tackles in there? I mean, Pierce looks really good and he can rush the passer, but Tomlinson's done absolutely nothing so far. And if he can't really help stop the run, it's kind of like having Shamar Stephen. It's like, what's really the point? I'm not going to go out and say he's as good as Shamar Stephen, but
put some respect on his name.
Yeah, honestly. So I'm just kind of looking at the Packers game here.
Oh yeah,
Packers were up 17-0.
Okay,
and then 49ers scored right before the half to make it 17-7.
Wonderful.
It's now 17-14. 49ers scored right out of the half.
Woo!
And they got the ball back just now. So that game is far from over. So let's go San Francisco, baby.
I saw a tie for the division lead, 1 and 2.
Trey Lance got a rushing touchdown for the 49ers. So
Oh yeah.
Hasn't thrown any passes yet though.
Go Bison.
Sebastian says, thanks for taking my questions, and I'm looking forward to T-Wolves talk. And yes, we didn't address the Gerson Rosas situation yet, but we're going to have some Wolves content coming out this week for sure.
Absolutely.
We know how popular the Wolves videos have been, and even the Wild videos as of late too. I think there's some excitement around these teams that are going to be starting here in another month. So it's very exciting. We'll be jumping into that as well. So hopefully, honestly, go ahead.
I was just saying, honestly, it's just nice to have. I'm excited to talk Wolves and Wild too. I love always getting hyped for a new season, but at the same time, it's nice to have some new life injected into this Vikings team again after a very gut punch loss last week to Arizona.
If the Vikings can climb their way back into contention here, which they've kind of done with the win today, and if they can go on a little bit of a run here before the bye, they'll definitely be in contention. This could be a really fun fall for Minnesota sports. I mean, the Gophers was just a putrid loss to Bowling Green over the weekend. I think that's kind of going to put a shot in their hopes for, achieving really anything in terms of like a good bowl game or anything. So,
man, when I got Jackson, who drinks more Gopher Kool-Aid than anybody I know, coming out after this Bowling Green loss on homecoming that he was there for, and calling for PGA's job. Well, not really, saying it was a fireable game, but then you got Tanner Morgan. He's calling for him to be benched. I know Jackson's been one of the biggest Tanner Morgan supporters I know, so I think that's really saying something. So maybe that's in the not within the success or potential success of this fall of Minnesota sports. But we know how quickly this can change between how pumped we are to just how disappointed we are. So,
it's like even with the Wolves. I mean, we were so pumped heading into the season, and now it's like, GM's gone.
Then you hear all that crap. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, we'll get into that later in the week. But
yes, for sure. More to come.
For sure. So I think the Vikings are going to be climbing back into contention here. And man, if Kirk can keep playing like this, this is kind of where I wanted to go next. If Kirk can keep playing like this, are you open to bringing him back for next year? Or possibly like extending him to lower the cap hit? This is the issue I have with this is if they play well and they make the playoffs, it's going to be the same issue all over again. Zimmer comes back, but they extend Kirk so they can lower the cap hit so they can bring in more pieces. It's like a reoccurring cycle rather than like I'm fine keeping, if they want to keep Kirk and play out his contract, that's fine.
Yeah,
But you can't keep extending him and screwing yourself in the cap situation, for years down the road.
I
So yeah,
know.
what are your thoughts, I guess, on that? I mean, we're 3 games into the season, a lot can change, but if he keeps
Yeah.
playing like this, are you open to bringing him back next season?
Man, why you gotta hit me with such a heavy hitting question here on a Sunday night? Ooh, I can't. I don't even know where to begin with this because, like you said, it's just. Of course, he would do enough. If we end up bringing him back next year, I would probably just reflect upon this moment and be like, of course, he did just enough to keep his job here, but just keep all these same problems, keep those in existence, and just keep us from really hitting new heights as a team and as a franchise. So I still, even if he has a really good season, it's going to take a string of playoff wins for me to really buy back into this, no matter what kind of regular season he has, if I'm being honest. Because if he has a great regular season, let's throw out the best case scenarios and let's be like, yeah, Kirk MVP conversation or potential MVP, whatever you want to say, if he
Yep.
continues this trend of games here, or like he has these first 3 weeks, if he continues to go in the upwards direction with this offense that I think has the potential to keep doing that,
Yep.
I even if all that happens and we get to the playoffs and we get bounced first round, or maybe we win a game, I'm still not there, because then I would just think that we did all this, we had this great season just for us to get the same exact results in the playoffs, and
Yep.
I'm not about that.
I'm with you. I think that's why I think the expectation from ownership needs to be get to the NFC Championship game. If
Yep.
with 4 years of Kirk, all was Zimmer.
Yep.
Zimmer got everything he wanted this offseason in terms of rebuilding his defense, and the
Yes,
defense
he
really
did.
doesn't look very good.
Not yet, at least. No.
Yeah, so if you can't get it done, then the expectation needs to shift. And like I said before, you don't need to tear the whole thing down. You could honestly, you could use Kirk as a bridge quarterback. Granted, he's taking up a ton of cap next season,
Oh.
but you could just play out his contract. You'll have some stability at the quarterback position, and I think they need to lean into the offense. Just you'll have all your offensive guys under contract. Nobody's going to be leaving on the offense besides potentially Kirk, but
Mm.
just lean into the offense. And the defense is going to struggle because you're going to lose some guys. Guys are getting older, but do what everyone else is doing. Lean into the offense. Um, I think there's definitely a scenario where Kirk is back, but it comes down to being realistic and like I don't know. I think what's more realistic is the Vikings win 8 or 9 games. They don't quite cut it to be a wild card team. They miss the playoffs, and then everyone gets broomed. So maybe not Spielman, but I think Zimmer and Cousins would go. So
I think, yeah, we need some serious success this year if those guys are going to keep their jobs. I think ownership's probably had it at this point, because obviously you already know in the draft or leading up to the draft, they were influencing Rick and basically everybody in the scouting department to evaluate quarterbacks pretty seriously and definitely take one early on in the draft, like a serious candidate to potentially replace Kirk. Because I think they've kind of had enough of this where we're paying him a whole bunch of money just to be mediocre, maybe win 10 games, scratch our way in the playoffs, make a game or two interesting, and then that's it. So
mhm.
I think definitely Kirk's job's on the line. And Zim too, really. We've been here at this now. This is season 8. So if we're still not getting results and getting back to the NFC Championship after we have invested all this time into it, then yeah, he's definitely on the chopping block too.
Yeah, and what's encouraging is like I saw a stat again today. We have the youngest offense in the NFL, and that's with Kirk Cousins at 33, I think, years old, and Adam Thielen at 31. Everyone else is young, and Dalvin's like 26, so he's probably got a couple good years left. But if you can keep Madison around, he looks like he's a good player. So really, the offense, it's if you decide to move on from Kirk, granted it's easier said than done. You just got to find the right quarterback, and if you can find a quarterback that's a good winner, good team player, good leader, then you can step right in and just take over where Kirk Cousins left off. Basically, I think the defense is going to struggle over the next couple of years. I really do, just because, like we talked about earlier, we haven't developed any young talent on the
Mm-hmm.
defense. Assume that Harrison Smith's going to be around, Kendricks is going to be around, Danielle Hunter. Hopefully, they'll sign him to an extension this offseason. Pierce will be around, so we'll have some pieces, but I think the cornerback's going to be a struggling position at least for a couple of years here. unless we can sign some marquee free agent or hit a home run on a draft pick. But I think what needs to happen, whether it's Zimmer or another coach, the Vikings need to lean into offense, because if you give Kirk Cousins more freedom, if you allow him to do more rather than keep training wheels on and feed the rock to Dalvin Cook 30 times a game, if you open things up and just play more freely, I think Kirk Cousins can win. Granted, it's different when he's playing, a strong defensive line. We've seen him just, fold against like the Bears, or last year against, 2 years ago, I should say, against the Packers when they had a good defensive line. So we've seen absolutely nothing that shows that Kirk is going to keep up this great stretch of play based off his previous, seasons. But
we've seen this before where he has put together pretty good 3-4 game stretches, but usually doesn't come until a couple months after the start of the season. So We'll see if this can continue.
Exactly. So I think that's what's interesting, is if he can put together a full season like this, that makes you kind of, reconsider things. But
I know
at the same time, it's like where this team is at. If they're not really ready to contend for like an NFC championship or a Super Bowl, it almost might be better to take a step back, clear your cap situation, get Danielle Hunter re-signed for the long term, and then you can always sign like a free agent quarterback like a Teddy Bridgewater to be your bridge guy, but then also go use your first-round pick to draft another quarterback. So that's kind of the interesting scenario that they find themselves in. They don't have to make that decision now. Nobody does. For now, Kirk Cousins is the quarterback, and he's playing really well. But it's just something to kind of think about. It's like, I don't think their plan all along has been to bring Kirk Cousins back. I think they've been kind of thinking this might be it for Kirk. But if he has a really good season, that kind of throws a wrench into the whole thing.
It's hard to do away with a guy if he puts together a really good season. So I think that's quite a dilemma they're going to have on their hands if this continues. But at the same time, I'll believe I want to see it. But let me actually throw a question right back at you here, Bailey.
Yeah, sure.
Speaking of theoretical topics, and thinking, is there a reality out there where, let's say our games continue to go like they have these last couple of weeks, where the offense is just dynamite, but then the defense is really struggling to hold up their end of the bargain and potentially losing us games like last week or this week just didn't look good, especially early on in the game. But, I mean, obviously they did tighten up later on. But let's say the defense never really quite figures it out and we're really relying on the offense. Could you just see a scenario where maybe we're like mediocre this season and we like scratch in the playoffs, lose game one, Zim gets fired. Maybe we just miss the playoffs altogether and he gets fired.
Yeah.
Could you see a scenario playing out where our offense is good this season and then Clint becomes the head coach?
I could absolutely see a scenario like that, because I think if Zimmer does get fired, the Wilfs are going to want a young offensive-minded head coach. And I think if Clint proves it, hey, I can get this offense to score 30 points a game, we're going to be in every game, I don't see why not, honestly. I mean, I wouldn't be against it either. It'd be nice to, have like a Kyle Shanahan or, somebody like that who's more established. But I don't even like, we've always been talking about Eric Bieniemy. I don't know if he's really wanting to take a head coaching job just because he hasn't gotten one the last couple seasons.
Yeah, and I think there's some serious steam of him being a head coach at USC, in my opinion. I mean,
which would be wild.
It would be really, but I mean that program's got so much history. He's a Pac-12 guy. I'm pretty sure he went to Colorado back in the day, so I could see it happening. Because honestly, I mean, think of the payday there too to coach just college football. Like they're going to give you their back up the Brinks truck for you as long as they want you. So I could see that happening. But again, maybe that's a little bit too too far out there. But I would say I definitely could see Clint being our head coach too if our offense has a really good season, but Sim still ends up finding his way out somehow just because we just don't live up to expectations defensively. And like you said, I think that's just the way to go these days with an offensive mind that can really evolve your offense into maybe more of a modern day, I don't know, how do you say? I'll just find success just doing it more conventional ways than things that feel like they're outdated. But then again, maybe Clint's really sees eye to eye with his dad and with Zim and believing in running the football a lot, and that being really the table setter for your offense. So that's also something to consider.
Yeah, and I think the one issue with Clint is I think he's a very quiet guy. I mean, I've heard the announcers mention that a couple times, like Clinton didn't say a word in our meeting or whatever, and then he kind of sits up in the booth and calls the plays. So that's what would worry me about him being a head coach. But I think like him being the offensive play caller, like you could sign me up for that, no problem. But in terms of the head coach, I think what I want most, I want a guy that's offensive minded for sure, an outside the box thinker, preferably a younger guy.
Mm-hmm.
But you need a guy that's willing to oversee the entire team because that's really been the problem with Zimmer since he's been here. He just oversees the defense. So, more than anything, it'd be nice, if that new guy came in and said, Clint Kubiak, I want you to be my offensive coordinator. I'll give you some more ideas as well. But I'm going to oversee the whole thing. I'm going to manage the game. I'm going to manage our timeouts and challenges. That's more what I want because, we've lost some games just due to poor time management under Zimmer. So more than anything, I want that to improve rather than bringing in a guy that's got all these fancy, ideas on offense, but he can't manage a game either. So what's it matter?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I do wish our game management was better. And like you said, it depends if they feel like Clint could really lead a team. Like you said, he could be a great offensive play caller, albeit he's only done this for 3 games. So let's see how it evolves this season and see if it gets better or if it potentially gets worse. I don't know if opposing, let's say, defensive coordinators or coaches, they kind of figure them out as the season goes on, what his tendencies really are. So that remains to be seen. But I'd also say sometimes you got to just take a stab at it and pick some guy that might not seem like the move really because, it sure worked out pretty well for the Rams because, who knew who Sean McVay was like 5 years ago? And then
exactly.
And then like he was a 30-year-old dude. He's still the youngest coach in the league right now. So that was very widely criticized having a 30-year-old guy be your head coach. But that's true. It's worked with tremendous results so far, and this year might be the best one yet. And they've already made a Super Bowl, so with him at the helm. So sometimes you can just strike gold.
Exactly. It seems to be the move now to go with the young, flashy offensive mind, and it'd be nice for the Vikings to get in that trend. But before you know it, they'll get in that trend, and then there'll be a new trend. So I just want someone who'd be a good, well-rounded head coach. Maybe they're good offensive mind and they'd be able to really help out the offensive coordinator. But I want a head coach that's not calling plays, honestly. It works for Andy Reid. It works for some other coaches, but like McVay. But I don't know, man. I just want a coach that's going to focus on the entirety of the game. And I also want a coach that, like McVay has as well, that is basically standing behind him the whole game, reminding him of the situation, recommending, hey, take a timeout here, stuff like that. I think
that's a really good idea.
We need more analytical, forward-thinking stuff like that.
Hey, Zim's all about analytics. Come on.
Zimmer's so stubborn. That's his problem.
He can get in his own way sometimes. But I also want to preface this by saying I know I've been going down this path of theoretical coaching changes that we could be potentially making depending on the season ends. But at the same time, again, like I said last week, I'm still a Zim guy. I'm still in the Zim train. So for now, I'm good with where things are going. But obviously, that can change in a heartbeat in this league because, like we just got done saying earlier, that every game just means so much. And when you lose one game, it can feel very low. But when you win a game like today, you can feel pretty high. So things change quick, and we'll see where we end up this year. But for now, pro Zim.
And I don't want to jinx anything, so I'm going to knock on some wood here. But we've remained relatively healthy. Cook missed today's game. There's been some other scattered injuries as well. Darisaw hasn't played yet, but there's been no true devastating season-ending injury yet, unless you want to count BC Johnson in training camp, which it clearly doesn't matter. Oh yeah, Herb, I guess, but Conklin's filled in nicely. So we haven't. It'd be a real shame if the offense was just elite this year, and then this was the year that Kirk Cousins got hurt.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go down that path, but it's just something to think about. We've been pretty healthy so far, and there's an extra game this year, so who knows, man. I hope they can stay healthy, at least keep it entertaining. It'd be, even if they don't have a great season, it'd be nice for them to be competitive in every game like they have been so far. And I think, Zimmer rarely gets blown out. He always has one game a year where they just come out totally unprepared. And I'm kind of hoping that was the Bengals game right off the bat.
Let's hope.
But, crap, Green Bay just scored.
Sweet.
So it's going to be 24-14 Green Bay at the start of the fourth quarter here, so.
That one's over.
It's disappointing. It's just I think it was a little wishful thinking that Green Bay was not going to be so good this year. They won't be 13 wins good, but
No.
I still think it's going to be they're going to be the team to beat for this division, I'm thinking.
Oh, for sure. When they have won 13 games each of the last 2 seasons, and how many division titles now in the last 10 years, basically ever since Rodgers has taken over, I feel like they are the standard. So gotta see it to believe it if we're really going to take over this division this year.
Yeah. So I guess any closing thoughts here before we take off? I mean, going into the Browns game next week. I guess we'll be doing some more Vikings videos throughout the week as well. But I guess any final thoughts as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I would just say fans should feel really good about this game. I think this was a great performance when basically it felt like all the chips are on the table because a loss to put us in 0-3 would probably diminish our playoff chances quite a bit. So
Yes.
I think this is a good step in the right direction. And I think everybody should have a pretty good Monday after this big win. I know I will.
Yeah, I will too. I think my closing observation is it was so great to see fans back at US Bank Stadium.
Yes.
That place was
Yes.
loud. They had
Electric.
Russell Wilson was kind of, I wouldn't say he was freaking out, but he was kind of scrambling, trying to get communicating to his offensive line and
Mhm.
receivers. So that was good to see. I thought the fans definitely had an impact on today's game. The defense, made some adjustments at halftime, really turned it around in the second half, didn't give up any points, which was great to see.
Yeah.
And we finally held Russell Wilson in check, which we hadn't seen under the Zimmer regime. So I'm encouraged about how today went. And even the second half against Kyler last week, I mean, they held him in check pretty good as well. So
True.
maybe Zimmer's kind of figuring out how to contain these mobile quarterbacks. And now, Baker's not nearly as mobile. And then you'll have
No.
Jared Goff and Darnold coming up. So
Oh no. Yeah, that should play into our favor a lot more.
that should make it easier for sure. I think Kyler and Russell Wilson are going to be some of the best quarterbacks we face this year. So at least we
Mhm.
got that portion of our schedule over with. And man, if we can get back to 2-2, we're right back into it.
Exactly. And all the years we made the playoffs with Zim, we've started 2-2. So
Yeah, that's a good point. So, yeah, I guess that's going to do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Give us a like as well, as it helps our algorithm for other fans finding us on YouTube as well. Give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram, and feel free to keep leaving comments below about how you felt about today's Week 3 victory over the Seattle Seahawks. We'll get into more Vikings conversation later this week as well. And yeah, thanks for watching.